Welcome back to episode 9, everyone. We're heading on into part 2 now, which is all about window functions. This is going to be more of an introduction, explaining how they are, what they are, and how we are going to use them in our select statements going forwards. Right then, let's head on in to SQL Server Management Studio. First thing as always is to make sure we're in the right database. So we're good to go for the lesson. Okay then, so to explain what window functions are all about, and they're also known as partitioning functions, we're going to have a look at the row number function. Now it's quite a commonly used function. I used it quite a lot, and I'll show you an instance later on about a practical use for the row number. Now all the row number does is it simply gives every row that you extract a number, starting from 1 on the very first row and going up by how many rows are returned. Now the amount of rows that are returned, as we know, is controlled pretty much by the amount of rows in the tables, these ones here, and of course in our where clause itself. So this is pretty much what's known as the scope of the query. So pretty much we're only pulling the data where the year on the invoice date is 2015, and that's a pretty hard coded scope. There's no flexibility on that, so we won't get any other years on the invoice date popping in to our results when we run off our query, because we know we're in adjoining, and that where clause is a definite finite filter on our select statement. Now, first way we're going to look at the row number here is in fact when it's not even partitioned or windowed. So strangely enough, you can have a window function without any windowing going on. So basically all we're saying here is we want to get the invoice ID, we want the extended price from these two tables, and we want to then put in a row number from 1 to however many rows are returned, and we write that by row number. We put in open and close brackets with nothing in the middle there, type an over, then we open our brackets again, and we need to put our order by clause. Now this is mandatory in these window functions. You have to have an ordered by clause because it tells you how to assign the row numbers to all the rows in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at the extended price, and we're going to order it by the extended price ascending. So the lowest extended price that we find within our query here, within the scope of the year being 2015, that'll be our first row number. So that'll start as 1, and as the extended price increases bit by bit, then it'll increase the row number as well. So to see this in action, let's run this off and we'll look at it in a bit more detail. So here you can see the lowest extended price within the invoice date being 2015 within our scope that we've set for our query is 10.87, and that's been given the number 1. And as you can see, as it goes on, we've got quite a few 10.87, and that keeps going through the rows there. Then we hit 13.8, 14.95, and it increases, going down and down and down and down. So you can see that's pretty much all that the row number does, is it assigns a row number from the lowest extended price, going up by 1 all the way to the highest there. Now we've got quite a few of exactly the same value here, So if we don't specify in our order by any additional sorting, it'll simply pull the data off the table as it sees it. So for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, you can see this invoice ID isn't sorted in any way, but because these are all the same, it's simply just starting at 1 and moving across to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, etc. Now we can add in the invoice ID, and if you see this column's not sorted at all, we can also add in the invoice ID there as well. So you can build up your order by clause pretty much like how we usually do it within the normal query here to see our results. Another thing you'll notice is I haven't put this bit here like that, which I can do and we'll get the same result. I've actually put what I'm naming as the column in the order by phase here. And that works because if you remember way back in episode 5 when you started looking at the select statement, SQL Server reads the from statement first, so then we can put in our pseudonyms here, then obviously filters using the whereby clause, and we can use pseudonyms because the engine detects them here. Then it builds up your select, takes your columns, and as we've already built up the pseudonyms in the from clause, we can now put them in our select clause and the engine knows exactly what they're referring to. And then last but not least, we want to show our results in our order by. So as we've put in the select, we've effectively given this column here a pseudonym, then we can order it by that pseudonym as well. SQL Server is clever enough to know that this actually equates to this here. So now that we've put in our invoice ID as a second order by there, let's have a look at the results from there. It takes a little bit longer because we're bringing in this function as it is, and it's doing this secondary order by within our row number. So as you can see, a little bit more overhead to run that off, but you can see that our invoice IDs are sorted in numerical order as well. So we're firstly sorting it by the extended price, and then we're going to sort it by the invoice ID. That way we make sure that we get the lowest extended price going upwards at all times, but then as a side note we can then sort the invoice ID as well in the order that we want to see them. Now of course we can put ascending into that as well, and if we run that off you can see that it starts at the highest invoice ID, etc. And of course if for whatever reason we wanted to shift these around, we'll then get some very different results. And as you can see, I haven't had to change the order by because I'm using a pseudonym there, so whenever we change this we don't have to then change it in there, which is a big bonus. So let's write that out. So as you can see, it's pretty much ordered the invoice IDs first, assigning the row number, and then it's ordered the extended prices. But as each order ID being invoiced first only has one invoice ID there, it sorts it like this. So what I'm trying to say here is that it's important to get your sorts in the right order, because this is kind of meaningless, it's all over the place, doesn't really tell us anything, but this one here does. So this is our lowest values, and scrolling all the way down to our highest values there. So that in a nutshell is the row number, and we've only got the order by clause in our windowed function there. Remembering, of course, that if you have multiple order by there, the order in which you put them in and you sort it by is very important in producing your results. It can be useful or they can be meaningless depending on which way round you have that. And we can also see that you can have multiple columns that you want to sort the results by, and we simply return a row number with that. Now, what if we wanted to actually start partitioning and bringing in the window aspect? Well, we can see here we use the partition by clause within our row number function. Hovering over that returns begin. So it returns an integer, pretty much as we've seen in these results here. So what we're going to do is simply do a very similar thing, except we're going to bring in the customer ID now. And what we're doing with this simple subselect here is we're just basically summing all the extended prices per order ID, per invoice ID. So we don't want to break it into individual lines, otherwise we'll get several rows for each order ID and each invoice ID. What we're going to do is group it so that we get one extended price at the end. One order ID, one invoice ID, and one total extended price. So that's what we're after, and that's all we're doing here in this little subselect. So we then want to pull our customer ID, get the invoice ID, and get this summed up extended price. And then we're going to apply our row number function there. And all it's going to do is it's going to order by the extended price and put 1 to the amount of rows, but we're going to do it for every single customer ID. I'm going to call that row number ascending. So in effect our scope is pretty much where the customer ID is greater than 2. So for every single customer ID 3 and above, we're going to be applying our row number per customer ID ordered by the extended price. So let's have a look and see what happens there when we run off this little query. So here we have customer ID 3, as you can see, and he goes all the way down the list. He's got his invoice IDs and the extended price. Here's the lowest, because this was ascending, so we take the lowest extended price for customer 3 and we assign row number 1 to it. And then as the price increases, as you can see there, as the total extended price goes up, so our row numbers go up as well. So irrespective of the invoice ID, these numbers will be going up for that customer. As we go across, as we scroll down, we get to customer 4, and as you can see, it begins with number 1 again. So that's all that the partition clause has done. It's assigned a row number of increasing extended prices for every single customer ID. So customer 4 here is the cheapest extended price, and then scrolling down, get to 5, here's the most expensive, and so on and so on for every single customer ID that we are looking at within our scope here. So once again, we've got the order by in there, which is mandatory, as we know, but now we're bringing in our actual partitioning clause, the clause that we use to really build the windowing part of our row number function. So that's all you need to do to bring that in. Of course, if we wanted to show the highest to the lowest instead of the lowest to the highest, we simply put a descending in our order by on our extended price. So when we execute that, you can see instead we've got the highest value here, that's row number 1. As we go up in the row numbers, we get to the very lowest there. So it's pretty much just putting things in reverse on the extended price. Now the invoice ID is irrelevant in the whole partitioning clause. It's purely there as information purposes because we haven't put it in our partitioning clause. So for example, we could have put it in here as an additional partition, but that wouldn't really make much sense in our results. We're simply putting it in as just data column against each order ID, each customer ID, etc., etc., just for information, but we're not using that at all within our partitioning function here. So that's simply how to build your partitioning, your windowing within your row number function. At all times remembering the order by is mandatory, your partitioning isn't though. But as you can see, by bringing in this partition part, it gives our returns a lot more value. So our data becomes a lot more meaningful as we go forward. So let's have a look at a quick scenario and see if we can get our head around this feature a little bit better. Scenario is that the warehouse manager is looking to try and improve efficiencies within his picking team by updating the current and antiquated processes. He's after the following info. So we want the stock item name, stock group name, and the quantity of the stock on hand. So there's all just 3 columns extracting from tables, no messing around there, pretty straightforward, pretty simple. But he also wants to know the quantity on stock of hand from lowest to highest for every stock group, so he can put his new floor plan into place. So we're going to have to somehow come up with a way of displaying these results with this extra bit of information in there. And I suspect one of the best ways to do that would be to build some sort of partitioning function, probably on the row number itself. So the key thing here, obviously building up these select statements pretty quick and straightforward. The key thing for you here is to decide what one of these columns you need to put in on your partitioning area and what part of these 3 columns you need to put in on your order by clause. So I think you can give that one a try. Reckon you can do it. I'm sure you can. Pretty simple and straightforward stuff. So if you're keen to give it a try, simply pause the video, bang out some code, and when you're ready, we'll check it out against what I have to offer. Right then, let's begin. So what's the first thing we need? Stock item name. Let's have a look at the database. We're going into the tables and we're looking at the warehouse schema there. Stock items, yep, that's pretty much where it is. Whoops. Put that in the wrong place. We're going to call that I for items. How about that? And we need the stock item name. There we go. Happy days. Now we need the stock group. Where is that? Probably in another table. So we need to bring that in. Stock groups. There we go. We're going to call that G on presumably a stock group ID. Stock group ID. There we go. Stock item ID. Nope. We want the stock group ID. It's not liking that, so what is going on with that? we have another table that we need to put in. Let's have a look at stock groups table. Stock group ID, stock group name. And let's have a look at the stock items table. Does it have a stock group ID? No, it doesn't seem to have that. So we need to bring in another table. Where could that be? Stock item, stock groups. That's a good place to start. We're going to call that S. Stock item ID equals I. Stock item ID. And then stock groups is like a linking table between the stock item ID and the stock group ID. There we go. As S, and we've linked it all up. Now, the reason that they've built in this extra table to link the two together is because, as you can see, the stock item, the same stock item, can belong to different groups. So it's some sort of linking table to expand the groups that each stock item can actually belong to. But we've now joined them all together, and we should now get all our values. However, we may need an additional table to pull our quantity on hand. Before we do that, let's put in the stock group name, which is from our groups table, and we need the quantity of stock in hand. So let's bring that one in. Stock item holdings. Let's have a look at that one. There's a stock item ID. There's our quantity on hand. Brilliant. So let's join that all up. ID equals, and we're linking it to our very first table. Stock item ID. You could have linked it to this one here, which may have been fine because we're all in adjoining, but we're linking it to our stock items up there. And we'll then bring in our column. Quantity on hand. Alrighty, so that's pretty much it. We've fulfilled this requirement here. Let's run that off. There you go. So we've got our stock group name, stock item name, and the quantity on hand. As you can see, we've got a vastly different array of values. So if we wanted to sort on this, it's a pretty good column to actually do any order by on. Here's a stock group name. We've got clothing, and then we've got computing, novelties, etc., etc. So that'll be a pretty good column to maybe do our partitioning on. So what thereafter, the quantity of stock on hand from lowest amount to highest. Great stuff. We know what we're going to put in there, and then we have for every stock group, so we know straight away what we're going to partition on. So let's build up our row number function. Spell partition correctly, which would be a good start. Partition by, and that's going to be stock group name, order by, quantity on hand, simply copying and pasting those columns from lowest amount to highest, and we know that it defaults to ascending on this one, so we don't need to put anything there, and we're just simply going to call this row number as such. So it's looking good to me. Let's have a look at our results. There you go. So quantity on hand is 3. That's the lowest amount, and that starts with 1, and it goes up and up and up for our stock group name of clothing, all the way on and up to 74, 570,000 furry animal socks in pink. Okay. Then we start at the next dot group name, computing novelties. 3 is the lowest, and that is row number 1 again, all the way up. Got 83 rows of that, 525,000 of those, and then we get on to furry footwear, starting at quite a high value there on 1, but as you can see as we scroll down, they increase and so on. Mugs is the next one, novelty items, etc, etc. So as you can see, we've now got a very easy way to see which is the least amount of stock, item with the least amount of stock, and we can have a look at which is the ones with the most amount of stock as well in there. Very easy to read those results going forward. So how did you all do in that little scenario there? How did your code go? Remembering what to use in your partition by and what to order it by as well. I'm sure you got exactly the same results as I did. Brilliant stuff. Okay, I'm going to pause this video right here, give you a little bit of a chance to let the information sink in about the row number and what it entails, what these window functions entail, and when you're ready for the next video, we'll have a look at some slightly more complex ways of using the row number function itself, how to build on this knowledge that we've gained here and moving forward into some more useful ways of using the row number. Everyone, have a good day, and I hope to see you in the next video soon.